Welcome back to our Hornets Walk episode 28. Henry says, regarding Sunderland, that was a superb point and a massive improvement from recent. Bar 2 set pieces, we were superb all over the pitch. Selvik is absolute mustard. Cleverly is still working miracles. And that's our talking point today. Selvik looking good. If you're watching this after, of course, the midweek games, skip ahead 5 minutes because we're also talking about the transfer window reflections. And are these three now Pozzo out? Who's the worst ever Watford manager? We have, of course, completed our Watford 11. Here it is. It's looking awful, but we need a manager. Who gets to fill in that missing question mark there? And we're also asking, because it's Valentine's week, how did these three fall in love with Watford? Stay tuned to the end for that. Aaron is back with us. Welcome back, Aaron. You missed our tribute to King Ken last week. We've got to start there with you. I mean, sad to see him depart.
Very sad. I know. I was gutted that I happened to miss that episode, but I was fortunate enough to bump into him before he said goodbye. I had a quick chat with him. He actually, do you know what? With Ken, not only was it the on the pitch stuff, he was obviously a great footballer for us, but it was off the pitch as well. That there's no better ambassador for the club than he's been. I mean, all the fan events, he's there. Always shown kindness, and for me personally, I was going through a tough time in lockdown. I had family members close to me pass away, and there's a thing around on Twitter where people were like asking players to make their Christmas and like say hi to them and stuff like that on social media since we're all stuck inside. And I did it, and Ken ended up replying, and he actually sent me his shirt from the Boxing Day game that season, and that's up behind me. Well, and there we go, just up there. And it brought me so much joy in a time where I was feeling really low, and I can never thank him enough for that. And he remembered me as well, which was awesome. And yeah, just good luck to him with whatever he goes on to now and beyond.
Yeah, absolutely glowing tribute. What a fella. Right, okay, we are recording this before the midweek game, of course, against Leeds. We don't know how that has gone, so just fast forward 3 minutes if you're tuning in after that. Let's talk about the Sunderland game briefly then, shall we? James says it was a very good point, but frustrating in a way. Great goal by Lauser and Selvik and Doumbia. I wish you would give me something hard, easier names to pronounce. It did well at different ends of the pitch. Shame we let us couple of sloppy goals in. Right, then let's talk about Selvik, shall we then? Rio, yeah, you're getting lots of plaudits online. How good was he?
Yeah, it felt nice to see a competent goalkeeper, which I haven't seen for many years. He claimed the ball well. He distributed it quite well. He was calm under pressure. He actually did a Cruyff turn, which he executed, which Batman didn't a few weeks before. And yeah, he made some very good saves in the last couple minutes where Sunderland were through on goal. You could argue they did fluff their lines. There was no power on the shots, but you got to save what's faced at you. And I think, obviously, we did concede two very sloppy goals, which were easily avoidable, which is why maybe the point is a good point. Would have snapped your hand off for it beforehand, but I think the defence was more reassured with a calming presence behind them.
Absolutely. More from Michael. Great performance. Unlucky not to win. 2 big saves from Selvik at the end. Doumbia could be the real deal. Could be the real deal. No, midfield were immense too. Even Kayembe, Luke. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, no, I thought it was really good, but I overall thought it was a really good all-round team performance. Same as Rio, if you said before the game we would have a point, I'd bite your hand off it. But I was really, really pleased with how well we played. It was only really 80 minutes of that we played that well, and they had that last sort of 10-minute stint. The goals we did concede were frustrating, and you take that out, and we kind of have dropped 2 points, if you like, because we were the better team by far. We've conceded 2 sloppy set-piece goals, but overall, I was really pleased with Doumbia, especially because that is a role which we have been struggling. If you go back on our episodes from last month, we need a striker who's competent. And he just seems like he just worked hard. It was a game where, as a striker, you're not going to be able to be picking up the ball, and he just worked. And that's kind of what we want to see. And going into the Leeds game tomorrow, I really hope he should be starting, because I think that's someone we need just to work. And the penalty he got, it was really well, as he had a good chance, he missed it, probably should have scored it, but he didn't stop. He just carried on going, and then he ended up getting a penalty out of it. And yeah, our midfield was brilliant, losing Delabashuru and yeah, even Kayembe. But Loser's goal I could only describe it as like a classy goal. That it was such a it was like art how he finished. It always reminds me like De La Feu goal. That goal was like art. Like it was just so beautifully. Like, I won't hit hard. It was just placed in gorgeously. And Delabashuru, who we still don't know really who takes penalties for us. It's kind of just whoever sort of must take the most in training. But yeah, really good finish overall. Yeah, overall really pleased.
Yeah, when we asked the Sunderland fans, why didn't you win? They automatically said, "Oh, that annoying guy up front for Watford who's just a nuisance all game for our defenders." Aaron, it wouldn't be where Hornets Walk if we didn't put the flip side of what people were saying on social media to you guys. So here comes the negative ninnies. James says, utterly baffling decision to bring Seriata and disrupt the defence again cost us the game. Watford Tortoise agreed with that. It says TC makes some bizarre subs, just brings complete chaos to the defence. We were crying out for another midfielder to help get the ball away from our goal. And then taking Doumbia off and putting Kayembe as the 9 is what efters. Should have been Ince at the 9 and Kayembe off as well. So, Aaron, sorry to give you the negatives. Do you agree?
I do agree with one of them. I agree the decision to bring Sierra on is odd. And look, Cleverley isn't the first manager to bring a centre back on when you're trying to hold a lead, and he won't be the last. It's just something that some managers do, and I've never agreed with it. I think you're way better off staying in the shape you've been playing in, bringing on like-for-like players who are fresh off the bench with energy and seeing out a game that way. I don't like how they bring on an extra defender and just invite the pressure. I think you're just asking for it. In regards to the Cleverley makes odd subs argument, the flip side of that, and we'll go into that in a minute, I'm sure, is who on the bench does he have? Who on the bench can you bring on? Really? Yeah, you could bring Tom Ince on up front. I don't think he'd do anything different to what Kayembe did going up front in the end. He would have just ran around and chased the ball. He hasn't got players like in all the positions to bring on and see out games. And that's why he's having to come up with sort of, I guess, creative ways of doing it, because that's what they've told him clearly is this is the group of players you've got. Make it work.
Yeah. Okay. How do I ask this one? The transfer window, Rio. I don't want to keep asking about it because you all said it wasn't good enough. But there seems to be a bit of a movement online with Watford fans. I guess it's summed up by this particular one. Jake says it might just be me, but I feel like the best way for us to start movements is in a massive group chat of people that you trust. Are Pozzo Out, because all of the spies they have on social media, because then the club can't figure out any way to get around the peaceful protest, obviously. Is there a movement starting, and are you in it, Rio?
I can tell you that group chat lasted about an hour before it fell off. But yeah, I think the problem with our fan base is we had a good performance on Saturday and a decent result. Lots of people will think it's now rosy and everything, but in the reality, it's not. People go off for a performance basis, but there's a lot of issues off the pitch, certainly, and on it as well. And going back to the January window, it was terrible. Obviously, that Marshall Godot deal fell through on the last day. He would have been a good signing, but ultimately, why are we scrambling around for players on the last day of window? Nanny said we've been working since September, and what we managed to bring in was a couple loans from Udinese, which is quite easy to do that at the end of the day, isn't it? And an injured left back who won't be fit till mid-March. So didn't back cleverly at all. And we've seen the state of this league. I mean, we're 3 points off playoffs, and we've got 1 in 10. If they wanted to sign maybe two out of the four positions that we needed, maybe out of a striker, centre mid, right winger, and left back, if they signed 2 of them. I'm not counting Wiley because he's injured. We could have a good go at the playoffs, but the negligence is unreal. And the fact that Doumbia, he had a very good game, but he has to start for us now, and against 3 of the toughest teams in the league, it's mental. And we're going into the rest of the season with him and Bayo. It's not good enough, and it cost us on Saturday because our lack of squad depth. There was no one to bring on, as Aaron or Luke said.
Yeah, Leeds and then Middlesbrough and then Luton. Luke, how far are we away from seeing Pozzo Out banners and so on?
I think it will be if let's say we lose to Luton. I think that would then be the flip side. Like we've had these sort of, there was this like the Pozzo Out sort of protest at the last game, which was like this. I don't know who thought of it. It was ridiculous. Anyway, it was to get your phone out and shine it to your torch at the director's box in the 72nd minute. But the game was a 12:30 kickoff, and it just looked like we was doing a light show. I sit at the top right, so the view of everything. I was just in hysterics. It was like, if you're gonna do it, like do it a little bit better. It was very like half-hearted. You can tell there's some people who are still Pozzo in, Pozzo out. So there's never really a full force for it. And I think to that sort of that tweet about getting a group chat, it's probably the best way to do it. But again, on the finance, there must be clearly something wrong financially. Like we do know that, but to be a sporting director, or to see from the top and look at that side at the end of Jan, I think we're pleased to go. Finishing that, I think, is a really poor decision. Even if you put even a little bit of money, like we're not asking for tens of millions of pounds, we're literally asking for like honestly just like 5 million. Like we know we haven't spent. You can see in our track record we haven't spent that much, but it's just the negligence that we've gave a side where we have a good coach. There's potential that we could be in the top half and even flirt with playoffs, and there's not much we can do if they haven't done it. I did like what Bristol City did when they actually tweeted about their overall opinion on the window and X and reasons why. And I'd rather have that and go, look, we haven't got the money for it. I think that would completely sort of like burst this issue, because then all the fans have clarity. Like we're all just guessing at everything at the end of the day with just sources. I think we just need more clarity from the board. I still am Pozzo out, but that clarity would just help all of us.
Aaron, have you, as your anger thermometer risen considerably in the last 7 days, or are you now just resigned to it?
I don't even know what to think at this point. As I said before, and it's similar to what Luke said, if there is financial issues and they are trying to get out, or they are really trying to bring investors in, just come out and say it properly. People have way more, they might still be Pozzo out, but they'll have way more sympathy for you if you're at least trying. Look, either you're working for this, like, to get this football club somewhere, or you're not. But right now, they're saying one thing and doing the other. They're saying they're all for Watford, they want to bring us back to the Premier League, and they're not showing that in their actions, are they? If Cleverley had been sacked, which looks like was definitely happening, it's quite clear from everything that's come out now that was happening. They were just going to go behind his back, sack him, and bring someone in. He didn't get in because of his work permit. If that had happened, I think you would have seen Pozzo out properly for the first time ever. The fact it hasn't has quelled it. And you have to think maybe that was part of that decision. Me personally, if we see this season out and he's sacked at the end of the season, then that will be it for me. That will be my tipping point. And I think it will be more people's.
Okay. Yeah. Watch this space. We'll have hopefully you'll have a nice quiet week for Watford this week. A nice easy 0-0 against Leeds and a 0-0 against Borough, and no dramas. I think come back next week and have a nice boring chat. Right. Thank you very much for that. And let us know in the comments what you think as well. Thank you for all the comments you put on last week's video as well, with your thoughts around the transfer window. It was great to read all of those, and we've been filling up our worst ever Watford 11, of course, over the last 3 months. It's now complete. We're delighted to hear, but have we got it wrong? So the first thing we want to ask you is, in the comments below, do you agree with what this team have put together? Of course, Rio and Luke added the midfield last week. Aaron, is there any midfielders you would have added had you been not your brother's birthday?
Yeah, there was two I could think of from our time in the Premier League. We had a Spanish bloke come in called Mario Suarez, who was absolute god awful. He was tipped to be this brilliant player. I think he had like maybe an international call up at some point, which was atrocious. Then we had a guy who I think also played for Sunderland called Didier Ndong. Again, played like maybe 10 games. Absolutely useless. Again, I think midfield and striker, you've probably got a decent list you can rattle off.
Okay. I was going to put Daniel Jebison in this team, yes, as this weekend he scored for Bournemouth and knocked Everton out of the FA Cup, so he can definitely go in next week. Right then, we need a manager though, folks, if that's okay. Then who's the worst ever Watford manager? Next week, join us. We're doing the worst ever Watford kits, and by goodness, there's been quite a few of those. So join us join us for that. And worst ever manager then, folks?
Oh, it's so easy.
It's the easiest one I think of a lot.
Are we all thinking Roy Hodgson?
Yeah.
It's not even a debate.
He was absolutely terrible. In terms, like, just everything about him, like, he was clearly here for just a payout, and he wasn't bothered at all. Like, we knew he was going to get a big lump, and we were kind of. I remember the first game was Burnley away, and we could have gone for it, and we drew 0-0, and that's when you sort of knew there was trouble. No one was happy with the appointment anyway, but it was like he just sort of just took the piss out of us, really. I mean, what always makes my blood boil was when we got relegated to Crystal Palace, of all places, and he didn't clap us, and he clapped the Palace fans off. And I remember the last game it was Chelsea away, and Watford are a very family-friendly club. They always have been. It's in the DNA. And there's literally fans singing when Roy Hodgson dies, we're having a party. And it was so loud as well. There was pure hatred from Watford fans. I don't think there is one Watford fan who would generally say Roy Hodgson was done good for this club, because he was basically a crook for our football club. He just stole our money in terms of wages, plays awful, god-awful football. I really can't stand the bloke. Honestly, pure hatred.
Let's see if we can find one. Is there any Watford fans out there that thinks Roy Hodgson's? Let's see if we can find one.
No chance. That cannot exist. Like Luke said, that Chelsea away end, I've never heard so much animosity towards a standing manager from their own fans. Like, the whole game was just Roy Hodgson. You're
Okay, got it. Right, that settled that debate pretty quickly then, didn't it? Let's move on to our final chapter this week. First of all, can you help us get to 100 subscribers? We are so close. We are so close. You've pushed us massively towards the close to the triple figures. Can you get us there this week? Show us your love as well, because it's Valentine's Day. Drop us a like. But yeah, push on to 100. That would make our week. Right. It's Valentine's Day on Friday. You've got all your cards written, I'm sure. But tell us about your love interest with Watford. When did it start, and who's responsible? Rio?
Well, my first game was in 2012-13. I wasn't a fan then. It was part of some football camp. Went to the game. It was against Burnley. I think it was 3-3. Vidra might have scored. But I turned on the Christmas lights at the old Harlequin at Injury Watford with Troy Deeney, Tozer, Doyley, Akechianya, etc. I won Watford's local hero. I wasn't even a Watford fan. My dad's an Arsenal fan, but I didn't really follow Arsenal. Went to a couple games with him, and then Deeney invited me and paid for me to be mascot against Birmingham when Cathcart scored that overhead kick. I also went pitch side when we lost to Derby and met all the players after the game. And then it's been 10 odd years now, and loved it. My first away game was that Arsenal famous cup game when Guardiola belted it from 25 yards, smashed it past the spinner, and that's how I fell in love with Watford.
Brilliant. Luke?
Mine is a little bit different. So I was actually brought up to be a Spurs fan. So my dad's a Spurs fan, and my first football game was actually Tottenham. Always lived in Watford. So basically, what happened was when I was about 9 or 10. My dad and his best mate started thinking of ways that we could go to spend the day together, and they did this deal, and it was for a season ticket in the 11-12 season. For me as a under 16, it was 30 quid, and I think for ours it was 100 quid. So you literally couldn't go wrong, and I loved it ever since. I only went to a few Tottenham games before then. I went to the odd Watford game here and there when I had my mum used to work for Aviva and get free tickets. I remember I went to my first Watford game was Watford Aston Villa. In the 06-07 season, and we drew 0-0, and I don't remember anything of it other than it being really, really foggy. Anyway, back to the season ticket. So I had a season ticket in that 11-12 season, and I just fell in love with it. It was every week. And then my first away game was the Man City away one in, I think, 13-14, and honestly, I just fell in love with it. And 13 seasons later, I've still got my season ticket. Been to 130 away games in that time. It's just I find it's just a way of life really now. That's the best way I'd describe my love for the football club. I'm very pleased I picked Watford over Spurs, 100%.
Yeah, you've done yourself. I'm not sure who's the easier ride, Watford or Spurs fans. I'm not sure on that.
Definitely Watford, I would say.
Yeah, Aaron.
So I was supposedly taken to games from the age of 2. My mum told me stories of taking me into the Rookery. I think she said it was Watford Crystal Palace for my first game. But so born in Watford, my family moved up to the Midlands when I was quite young. So I used to go to the odd game, but it was really my late granddad got me into Watford. He took me to the games. Earliest game I can remember, I went to an away friendly at Northampton Town because that's the nearest football club to where I live. And then I got my first season ticket in the first season of the Premier League when they opened a new section of the Elton John stand. And I've not given my season ticket up since. So yeah, it was my granddad that got me into it. Me, him, and my mum have had season tickets at Watford since then. My granddad sadly passed away, so now I go with mum. But yeah, it's just been life since then.
Brilliant. No one ever come close to a divorce? No.
Never.
No.
Never.
I remember when we first got relegated. From my time supporting Watford, first got relegated in that COVID season, lockdown season. I remember seeing some people I know who used to go to my school. They're now Spurs fans. Joke.
But I always think like that's like the best, not the best time, but that's when you really realise how much you love your club. But I remember I was, because in that lockdown season we got relegated, I was in Walkabout crying because there was nowhere else to watch it out of all the places. And like the FA Cup final, semi-final, I think like, you know, there's no point supporting a club where it's always going to be great. Like we've had the ups and downs, and that's what makes you being like a football fan. Really, it's what you love about it. You know, everything's not going to be amazing every week, and it's why we all do it.
So we'll end on that notion. Thank you very much, all three of you. Right, join us then next week as we'll obviously look back on the Leeds game. We'll also look back, of course, at the Middlesbrough game as well, which is a big one this weekend for Watford, as well as cleverly meets up with Carrick again. Old buddies, old pals. Right, see you in 7 days' time. Have a great, fantastic Valentine's Day. Good luck at Ellen Road. See you in 7 days.